war, they don't want a war with big Juggernaut, big Juggernaut. They don't want a war, they don't want a war with big Juggernaut, big Juggernaut. They don't want a war, they don't want a war with big Juggernaut, big Juggernaut. They don't want a war, they don't want a war with big Juggernaut, big Juggernaut. They ain't never seen a hook like Joyce's. Make these heavyweights settle down their voices. Me and Juggernaut are stepping out of Royce's. Told Del, but we got some other choices. Hey, they don't want a war with the Juggernaut. He's about to fight the Russian like it's Rocky IV. They don't want the walk, they just got the talk. See your coach for that white towel on the floor.
Power shot,
Just got saved by the bell. Joe's great, on the tell, back to take all the belts. And you just better wish for some help. Every time I see Joe Joyce, hit a man in hell. Knock another big Juggernaut, big Juggernaut. They don't want a war, they don't want a war.
And still undefeated, the Juggernaut, Joe.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 45 of the British Boxing Blog podcast with me, Stephen from Gateshead, and Andrew is here again from County Durham, coming live sort of midday, the day after Dubois Joyce. Hello Andrew, how are you?
I'm all good, mate. I don't think this class is live, it's pre-recorded.
It's pre-recorded.
We'll have to build with confidence on going to a live one soon.
We'll go boxing asylum style and we'll do a live one.
Yeah, we debut last night on their post.
I know, well done, well in. How was it?
Good crack. Like, they're always good crack on it. I think, again, deservedly give them a little bit of a shout out because they're one of the sort of independent podcasts that I've always listened to, or since we went to Bellew Cleverly 2, that's when I first sort of found out about them and started listening, when obviously they absolutely hammered that pay-per-view show and sort of sparked my cynicism of the sport. But like, they've just celebrated their 400th episode on Sunday night. Like, incredible that they've got that like the core of people, and it's almost like the cast of the Sugar Babes. They keep swapping over and stuff. But I think, like, regardless of how many people you've got to man the fort, like, consistency like that's unreal. Like, every Sunday we know exactly how hard it is to keep that going. So fair play to them.
Well, that's it. I heard Ozzy Smith was on Tom Crazer's boxing betting show through the week as well. Just the two of them were just chatting away about betting angles for Dubois Joyce, and he was saying like 400, and he hasn't been there for all of them, like you say, but he was just, putting that time aside on a Sunday night, and they make very sort of little dosh from it. They're a bit of Patreon stuff and that, but not amazing. You know what I mean? Like, and just that sort of.
There's more of them to split it as well.
Exactly, that dedication. So fair play to them for that, and also fair play to him and Tom for just pointing a few people towards that value last night in the, including yourself there. But you're happy the day.
All right, nice little added interest, shall we say, last night.
It's funny. The bit I mean was that sort of Joe Joyce between 7 and 12 stoppage. It was 18-1 when they shouted. I know that you got on at 14s. I was a bit late and got on at 12s, which, to be honest, it went against my whole prediction.
That's what I was just going to ask you there. Like, what happened to you last week? Last week we were all Dubois.
No, I was. I still was last night. That was my insurance policy. That was me cashing in on my insurance.
That's interesting because I've just listened to the Asylum podcast from last week this morning, and like, if I'd heard Ozzy talking about like Dubois and what he was going to do, and like, he was going to smash him within 5 or 6 rounds, and he was going to be too sharp and all this, I'd probably in my mind it was so convincing how well he spoke about it and how well he broke it down, just how he saw the fight going. And like, we've done it before as well, where sometimes you just get that picture in your mind of how a fight's going to go and how it's going to play out. And like, I don't think, I'm not sitting here saying like anyone who picked Dubois was a mug, because it was obviously, he was the favourite for a reason, and like, potentially, like, it was very easy to see him catching Joyce with something hard and clean and stopping him, and either knocking him clean out or putting him down or stopping him on his feet. There's all these permutations that you could see, and you think, oh, actually, any of these could happen. There's a number of ways Dubois could have won it, but what happened to your boy?
Well, that's it, like, I listened to Ozzy say basically the same things on Tom Crazer's, and I was saying to you, that's how I thought. And like, you know what I mean? Like, my instinct was that Joyce was there to be hit, and if someone's there to be hit, then Dubois will hit them. But there were signs of that, and he was hit, but he fucking made a granite, innit? There was the slightest of wobbles from Joyce. It was like a bit of a, like, my head goes that way, and then I'm all right again. And like, there was just, and as I say, going back to that bet, like, I just couldn't, even at 12s, I couldn't, in a two horse race, that value I just thought was incredible. Like, because I didn't think for a chance Joyce would do him early. So I thought, right, well, you know, that only leaves points on the second half of the fight. And I just thought that was, even a 12 to 1, I thought was worth a punt. I was sort of do kick myself because I listened to the show. I should have done it then and then when I heard 18s. But even when I put it in our WhatsApp group yesterday, I think it was still a sort of 16s or 14s. But anyway, I just thought, like, it's strange because it, like you said, what happened to your body going? It went against everything I thought would happen in that fight, but I just had to cover it because I just thought that value was. So I still ended up on the night, but like obviously I did have, you know, I put my money where my mouth was again, and I did cover Dubois as well. But I just think that even that 12 to 1 there just helped me out a lot. Like,
I think the way you've just broken it down as well, talking about, again, this isn't necessarily hindsight. Obviously, some of it will be, some of it is what I thought anyway last week. But like, I agree with you that Joyce catching him early and stopping him early was the least likely outcome.
Yeah,
I think points was always also unlikely, but you could possibly see it. Like, if Joyce kept his chin essentially and was able to withstand it, like, you could see it going 12 and either way, but not massively likely. I think either man, Dubois sort of at any time, and Joyce with the late stoppage were the two more likely outcomes. And I think obviously that's exactly how it played out. Like, it wasn't with a lot of confidence that I sort of nailed my colours to the Joyce flag last week. And as the week's gone on, I thought, actually, I need to tip this. I need to like get on it and sort of back it. And then there have been a few sort of favouring Joyce, most again favouring him late and to do it late. But I think even the way he did it, like, wasn't necessarily how many people saw it.
No, true.
But just to prove, we're not just talking about hindsight here. I've got a couple of quotes about the fight from beforehand. I've got Joe Joyce is way more experienced than Dubois as both a pro and amateur. He's tough, durable, and can push a good pace over 12 rounds.
That's exactly what happened.
Dubois needs to get JJ out of there to win. He can do that, of course, but if he doesn't, the Juggernaut will take over. We've got Joyce will have too much for Dubois over 12 rounds. The longer this goes, the worse it'll be for Dubois. Expect Joyce to take him out late. And then the last one, Joyce will wear down Dubois over the course of this one and secure a late stoppage when the young man tires.
Well, the funny thing is, you mentioned a few points there. And
they're all mine.
You sort of bang on, but at the same time, like, it wasn't necessarily it was a destruction of the eye, I guess, and he did quit. But how do I word it? Like, he didn't like massively take him out per se. Dubois was 8 rounds up without him on one of the cards, whether you agree with that or not. Like, do you know what? No, definitely not. No, neither do I. But like, he took him out, but not in the fashion that everyone thought he would. It was a bit anticlimactic, I guess.
Personally, the only sort of, not the only way, but the most likely way I saw of him taking him out was like just tiring him out, because Dubois, yes, he'd gone sort of 10 rounds against Kevin Johnson, and he's got a lot of skills that I'm not going to sit here and write him off for the future. He's still a very talented boxer and obviously a lot of power, and all those things are still true. But one of the question marks over him was, how is he going to cope if he's in there with someone who can take his power but also give him something to think about? And I think what Joyce did really well, he jabbed, and I mentioned this like when I was on the asylum last night, like, his jab is so unorthodox. It's not a sharp, straight, tidy, like orthodox in the sense of normal looking jab. It was so bizarre watching him. He almost poured it out, and it was like a little bit of an uppercut in there. He was flicking it at times. He was like slapping it in from funny angles. But what he was doing, it was just constantly giving Dubois something to think about and constantly offsetting him and not letting him get his own punches away. And I think that battle of the jabs is one area that I didn't see Joyce getting the better of him. I thought he's going to have to eat the jab and take shots to push him back. But he actually sort of pressured him and eventually forced the stoppage through smart boxing, as well as landing that jab. He mentioned after the fight, and you could see it during, that he was constantly turning off to his right, so it negated Dubois' right hand, and he did land a few that looked fairly clean. But like you said, he just sort of knocked him off balance because he was sort of moving away from the shot. He wasn't moving into it, and there wasn't a mark on Joyce at the end of the fight, really, considering how throughout it you thought it's Dubois landing the cleaner work.
Yeah.
And even though he was pouring his jab, Joyce, it obviously did a lot of damage. Like Dubois was reddening up early on, and then the ultimate damage to the eyes ended the fight, essentially, just based off that jab. I mean,
you mentioned the battle of the jabs there, though, Andrew, and I think even I think it was round 5 where Dubois sort of came out and thought, right, I'm going to just jab with you. And Dubois had the better of it. Dubois can jab and can box, and I thought I wanted to see a bit more of that, really. Like, as I said to you there, whether you agree or not, and you don't, that neither do I really. But Dubois was on his way to a points win. Like, on one card, he could have lost the last 3. He could have, within 2 seconds, he could have lost the last 3 rounds and still won the fight, or won that one card, and he was 2 up on another. So again, all he had to do was take, he wasn't massively being outboxed. If he wanted to, I think he should have just concentrated on his boxing a bit more, and like he proved that. And I think it was round 5, like I said, he must have thought, or his corner must have thought, right, go on, just box with him, jab with him, and he was really flicking it out. And I thought that's actually really decent. But then he stopped doing that again, obviously with the eye getting worse or whatever. Like 8 and 9 and 7 starting to just turn that bit scrappy, and it suited Joyce a bit more. And I just think, like, I just wonder if this morning he wakes up and thinks, like, he's probably heard about them scorecards and thought, could I have just seen that out? Could I have just flicked me? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't think it was a masterclass by Joyce, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think it was a proper boxing move. Jab your head off master. Like, Dubois was on his way to a good win there. Probably anyway. Like, just take a couple more of them last 3 rounds and he would have won the fight. So I guess that's where the disappointment comes in for not getting back up.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you, but basically, do you think it was more physical or mental? Because early on, I had Joyce winning the first, and I'm going to admit now it was sort of what I call background scoring. I was sort of tallying up as I was watching it, but obviously in between looking on Twitter, looking on my phone, etc.
Yeah. Talking to me.
Full silent, knock everything out, scoring like I sometimes do.
Yeah.
Just because I want to watch the fight and enjoy it, really. But
no,
I think like Joyce won the first, and then Dubois came out the second as though he was had a bit of a rocket up his arse in the corner and thought
well, I want to touch on that in a minute.
Got to come out and do a bit more. And as you say, he got on his jab. His jab is sharp. It's quick. It's more standard in terms of the technique, and that sort of almost piston-like. And he was letting the right hand go and giving Joyce something to think about. And then it was almost like even early on in the fight, he couldn't necessarily sustain that because he then not necessarily took the rounds off, but for me, he then lost the next 2 or 3 rounds where he just allowed Joyce to sort of get in there. And you think, well, obviously it's a lot easier said on the outside. Why isn't he maintaining that? Like, he's the one eating those jabs from Joyce. Obviously, we've talked about the physical impact they've had. They're obviously frustrating him, but also going to be a bit of pain in there as well. Like, he's taking these shots that are reddening his face off someone who's best part of 18 stone. It's not as simple as, right, well, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And I think up to this point, for Dubois, it has been that. Like, whatever's come back from him hasn't been enough to deter him or stop him doing exactly what he wants to opponents. And then the 5th, I think I gave to Dubois as well. Like you mentioned that one. It was another one where he came out, and especially for the first minute of the round, he looked a bit busier, a bit cleaner with his work, a bit more aggressive and offensive. But there's questions there whether physically could he maintain that. Like, he looked like he was breathing heavily from sort of in the second half of the fight as well. He didn't quite have that same pace for, there's not many heavyweights can do it for 3 minutes of every round, but for 30 seconds to a minute of the round, came out, Joyce withstood that, and then had things his way for a bit of it as well. That's how I'd generally seen anyway.
No, I think you mentioned a couple of good points there. That I think you mentioned the rocket from his corner. That was happening for me from basically minute 1. And I found that corner pretty strange last night. For one, I don't think they really paid any attention to the eye. Could they have maybe pulled him out, or could they have tried to be a bit clever and get the doctor to look at it and sort of, get the eye? Like, it was just sort of send him out regardless with his eye. And then it was quite a reactive type of thing last night in the corner. Every round they were like proper blasting him. And maybe that's what he needs, because, maybe that's the way he reacted. Like, they were proper blasting him in the corner. Like, and then you'll see signs in the sort of first 30 seconds of the new round. And like, even at one point they said to him, "Come on, Daniel, stay with me," type of thing. Like, stay with me. And Jess looked at me, girlfriend looked at me and went, "Why did they just say stay with me? Like, is he like, it's just a weird thing to say. You don't,
because
like, stay with me is like someone that's about to pass out, or like, I don't know, it's just very...
is his concentration levels maybe not necessarily where
does
they
he
need to
does
be?
he
Like,
does he demand the rocket? Like, does he need the rocket type of thing?
He seems quite laid back, doesn't he? Though he's always quite chilled and relaxed to the point
Well,
of,
it's one way of putting it.
yeah, I'm being generous, to the point of sometimes being a bit like, I don't know the word, this is out sound offensive, but a bit slow, in the sense of, like, we know he's not the sort of quick wit, sharp tongue, fast comebacks and stuff verbally. And is it almost like he needs exactly sort of what he's doing? And it's not, that's not a massive criticism, because we've seen similar with Anthony Joshua, in that he's been trained to box to a plan. And a lot of the sort of critics of Joshua say that he can't necessarily adapt to a fight as it's happening. He needs to go back to the corner and have them sort of break it down in that minute and say, right, this is what's happening. This is exactly what you need to do. Go out there and land the 1-2, or go out there and get on the jab, or look to land an uppercut, or whatever it may be. And then he goes out and he obviously executes that plan, like, more often than not, phenomenally for Joshua. And maybe there's a similar sort of... I just
noticed it all the time. You must just respond to that type of corner work, I guess. But when I mentioned corner, I think it's only fair to say, like, well into Joe Joyce's corner, like Steve Broughton as well. A lot was made, whether rightly or wrongly, through the week of Salas not being here with Joe Joyce. And, I've seen a lot of pretty scathing stuff on social media of, like, bloody disgrace, his trainer's not here and all that. And, in the end, it didn't matter one bit. I think Steve Broughton sort of stepped up to the plate, and I thought Joyce's corner work was spot on. It was very good.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Fair play to him. Like,
again, I think it's like, again, we can sort of dissect that completely, but it just shows, like, obviously, the fact that Joyce only sort of appears to have one real way of fighting.
Yeah,
obviously
that's his way.
The fact he's lacking a trainer hasn't really hindered him in that. But I think it's worth reiterating. Like, he did have a plan, and he boxed technically and tactically very, very well, and ultimately that got the better of him. Like, regardless of, I mean, if Dubois kept going, as you say, we could have had a big, massive controversy on the scorecards again. But, like, fortunately, the right man won. And it's interesting, like, talking about the finish, like, it came out of absolutely nowhere. Like, considering the damage, and I've just had a little look through one of our chats there in one of the groups, and I don't know which round exactly it was happening, but I've said must have been about round 5 or 6, because I said I've got a 3-1 to Joyce. You then replied saying, like, enjoyed that Dubois round. We're sort of agreeing.
That's when he came out and jabbed, and then
5th, and then I said bit of a rocket in the corner there, and then a couple of minutes later, so he must have been going in round 6 or 7. I've said Dubois' eye could get absolutely fucked here, because, like, at that point you were looking and you think, Jesus, like, you sort of noticed it, and the commentary hadn't made that much of it either. They had sort of mentioned it and saying, like, it's swelling, but it's not necessarily closing. And to me, it was like, actually, this could be really bad here, and obviously it's been caused by punches. So even if it's funny, the doctor had a look, like, the doctors weren't seemingly there in the corner having a look at it.
You mentioned the commentators, and it was obviously the same commentators that did Heffron Bentley, and they made a massive deal of Heffron's eye. And I tweeted out, I was like, what are we thinking about this eye, everyone? Like, is it Heffron sort of levels, which was obviously bad, if you know the fight I'm referring to a couple of weeks ago. And everyone was like, nah, nowhere near. And I like I was saying to you, I was like, that's bad, that. It wasn't, and then, like, it was the decisive factor in the end, I guess. And just that stoppage, like you said, for a hell of it. You just sort of, I shuddered when I watched it back, thinking, oh, imagine that going right on that dodgy eye, shooting through your head, and that, that would.
The jab landed, the jab landed, almost saw the shock from Dubois, but as if he froze for that split second.
Did he not see it? Did it just fucking kill? Or could he not? Was that like? Did he think his eye fell out, or could he not see it? Like, was it a combination of everything, or was it just like, nah, I can't do this. I don't want this.
This is where
you never know, really,
John, in it, because
always does.
every single time like a fighter quits, and I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it, but at the same
tweeted it
time,
and deleted it last night. I was like, oh,
but at
brace
the same
yourself.
time, I'm gonna like I say this all the time, and like I've been consistent with it. Like, however you word it, and I understand that boxers will look at me and think, well, why should I take that from you? Like, you're saying that to me,
Yeah.
well, like, you've never been in there. And the right, like, I would have quit
Exactly.
as soon as if I'd managed to ever get in the ring against Joe Joyce. As soon as he come towards me, I'd have been thinking of quitting. Like, as soon as he tapped me with a shot, I'd have been down. Like, I'd have been doing what Dubois did in the 10th. In like minute one, like first 10 seconds of the fight. I'm not disputing that. But whether you're using English language, if you say he quit, he's the one who's in there, he's decided to fight another day, he's thinking of his family, his welfare, his future. All of these things are true, but they don't change the fact that he has decided he's had enough for whatever reason. And I think boxing isn't an unforgiving sport. It's brutal. There's no way around that. And I'm not going to criticize him for quitting. I'm just saying that that's what he did. Like, that's the way I saw it.
Same.
Like,
that's it. Yeah, I just think, like you
said,
said,
he could have physically continued. Whether the corner should have stopped it, whether the doctors could have stopped it. Like, again, they would have been well within their rights. And only Daniel Dubois knows whether it's because he hasn't seen the punch coming, like you've said. Is it caused a pain? Is it caused a feeling that like isn't necessarily pain, but you felt something crack or something go, something's not quite right there? Or is it a combination of all those things and the fact that maybe he hasn't had his things his own way for the best part of 11 rounds, and he's...
But you say that he hadn't had his own way, but as I keep referring back to it, he was still winning that fight. Like, do you know what I mean? Should his corner have been a bit more alive to that? Like, come on, Daniel, like, you're winning this, like, you don't need the big knockout here, Daniel. Like, just keep going. You're winning the fight. Or was it sort of selfish cornering, as if they're only thinking about them getting the win and like sending their man out regardless when they're literally staring into his eye at the end of every 3 minutes? Like, should they have kept sending them back out? Could they not have been a bit more of a fuss about the eye? That's what I keep referring back to, I guess. But
yeah, and I think like when you look at the logic and the sort of reasoning behind Dubois, however you word it, deciding he didn't want enough, ending the fight, whatever, drop him to the knee, etc. Like, it's impossible for us to sit on the outside and know exactly what's gone through his head. But I saw I was up well late last night, saw a lot of debate raging on social media about the whole incident and the reasoning why, and was it the right decision? Like, what would you have done if you were in there, etc. And I think looking at it, like, you can sort of wonder whether the live to fight another day argument, has that actually gone through his head at that time? Like, has he eaten that shot and then within a couple of seconds thought, oh, that really hurts, or like something's broken, whatever, like, I can't see, I'm going to take a knee, I'm going to get out and I'm going to fight again, I'll rebuild after this? Or is it just in that point where he's maybe struggling physically, he's tiring, I think someone said on our Twitter, like replying to it, his lungs are burning, he's gasping for air, he's getting hit by an 18-stone man who's still there after he's thrown all his best shots at him.
And his eyes completely
gone. Has he then thought, actually, I just want out, I don't want this to happen? And then maybe a minute or so later, he's getting interviewed by the side of the ring. Is he then thinking, like what you've just said, oh, actually, I was winning that fight, I could have possibly gone on? Like, we've all done that. We've all been in a situation where we've give up with something,
well, that's it.
And wanted out of something, like a certain situation, and then afterwards you're like, oh, actually, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Like, you sort of play it down. It's the way the mind works. Well,
I think obviously the caveat is now that since discovering that he was 8 rounds up on one of the cards, and you think, obviously we didn't know that at the time. Do you know what I mean? That came out after the event, and now that adds a certain other level of like, oh shit. Do you know what I mean? But also, exactly. I think it's hard, like you say, like, not getting into that. If you haven't boxed, you shouldn't talk boxing. But Stephen, 33 from Gateshead, who's never really taken a punch in his life. Do you know what I mean? How can I really get in the head of Daniel Dubois, know exactly what he's thinking at that point? But then I think then there's people like me out there. There's also people like Carl Fatman, who was doing the coverage last night, who was absolutely fizzing at Dubois. And like, he was simmering, but he was just trying to keep a lid on it on BT. Like, you know, just to keep a professional level of sort of punditry, but you could tell little Carl was raging last night and just saying like, you just call it as it is. He says, I tell us a spade is a spade, and he quit, and like he should go out on his shield. He'd rather get knocked out than do that. And I think so for all those people like me and you out there who, you know, can't really get into that side of it. You know, we can call it, we can say how we've seen it, but as a you know, professional,
getting into the side
world class fighter like Carl Frampton, who's been in and done it, and you know, world champion the lot, like lost, won, whatever. That's the way he's seen it. David Hay pretty much backed him up, but you know, David Hay. I think I like
David Hay, though, to be fair to him. Like, look at what he did against Value. Like, he had one leg and he was.
Well, that's true. He soldiered on. He did. I know.
The chain McGuigan through the towel. Like,
so right.
He wanted to get absolutely poleaxed. Like, he'd rather have been spark clean out. So again, like those two are in a better position than us, better quality.
I love this with them.
To know exactly what it's like in that situation. And Tony Bellew was the same with Kell Brook against Spence.
What did you think? What did you think of the
situation regarding the eye injury?
Yeah.
Like, when Bellew got sort of asked about it, he called it out, saying he quit, and he's like,
he'd
never have done that. Like, and I think physically it'll be interesting to see where Dubois goes and what he has left, because obviously we've seen with Brook, there's always going to be question marks over those eye injuries, and you think, what's he got left? And we'll talk about the finish against Crawford. That could came very quickly, and from that point of view, Dubois against the heavyweight, like taking those shots, is he always? Can you possibly? Like, it'll take a monumental effort mentally to get back in there, try and get back to world level, knowing that you potentially got this injury that could flare up again or could reoccur, which then feeds into the physically, can he hold up to it? But then that feeds into the psychology of it and his mental state. Can he go in, be willing to take those punches again? It's fascinating to see where he goes from here.
Well, no, it really is. I will get onto that in the next short while. But I just think, like you say, it's always going to be there in the future opponents' minds. And I also think probably in the public's minds as well. Like, Dubois was pretty unflappable before that. He was seen as this sort of like AJ 2.0, bit of a wrecking machine, just no gimmicks, no fuss, no massive personality, and just a proper like knockout artist. And I think, like, you know, heavyweight boxing is probably the easiest division to sort of get carried away with. Do you know what I mean? We all love a heavyweight that can bang and look good in banging. And I just think, like, you know, it's, as I said last night, a bit of an eye-opener for Dubois that he's not... it's, you know, regardless, Andrew, even if he won that fight, I still think there would have been that bit of anticlimactic feel of, like, actually, he's not on the level we all thought he was, and he's not the new AJ, and he, you know what I mean? He's still a work in progress, even if he won that. You know, the talk of world titles now in hindsight was very, very premature. And like I say, even if he won it, I still don't think we were watching a proper elite heavyweight fight last night by any means. I think we were sort of definitely in that tier down. Like, I don't think either of them were world class really at this point. Like, you know, Joyce will probably go on to better things. Dubois will have to start again, I guess. But it just, even if he'd scraped it on points and won it on points, I still don't think we were looking at the new king. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not writing him off because he's only 23, like I say. But I think, like you've said there, it's going to take a lot of coming back mentally from quitting. That'll plague him for a long time now. He's going to have to get a lot of fights and again against decent opponents as well to really get that out of his system. And I also think that it'll, like, in the eye of Joe Public as well. Do you know what I mean? A lot of, like I said, it's the easiest division to get carried away with, and a lot of people, myself, you know, we like heavyweights that can knock people out, and like he's always going to be known as the quitter, or, you know, Dubois. Like, I've seen it already this morning, like this sort of, you know, where, you know, he's maybe not Frank's golden egg and that ticket to success, and people will take a long time maybe to get back on board the Dubois train again, I think.
And on the flip side of what you've just said about the heavyweight division being the easiest to get carried away with fighters in, I think on the opposite side, as I said, on the flip side, like, it's probably one of the hardest divisions to match someone in, because Dubois, as an example, has, as you say, smashed through everyone apart from Kevin Johnson, at a lower level. Like he's gone through area level. Did he win the English title? I'm not sure. He definitely won the British.
Yeah.
Like he's made those steps up, and then he's defending his British title against another good British fighter. The European title's also on the line, which I've got no issue with. They're both good enough to be competing for that. But we've heard all the way through that he's a baby at this level. He's really young. He doesn't have the sort of massive amateur pedigree and experience. He's learning on the job. And you want him to build that excitement. You want him in against essentially knockover jobs. People are going to go in and absolutely destroy. And he's done that, and he's looked sensational doing it. And you can't argue with he's got power. Like he's knocked these guys out. He's stopped them. He's got thudding shots, power in both hands. All of this looks great as a heavyweight specimen. But then where do you, from a matchmaking point of view, find that resistance? Because the lower levels and the lower weights, I should say, you can find guys that are maybe a bit over the hill, but are still durable, that don't necessarily pose that threat of a knockout, or they're not going to catch you with something necessarily huge. There's lighter hitters lower down the weights. And you can get someone in there where you go 10 rounds or you go 12 rounds and you can still look good doing it, not massively be troubled, but build up that experience of getting the rounds in. Whereas heavyweight, if you are in with someone who's like a former world title challenger or a former world champion, someone a bit past the best, there's still that danger that like at heavyweight, anything can happen. And I think they've tried to progress Dubois as best they can. Obviously the Gorman win was a good one. Like, then in hindsight, it's been too big of a jump towards Joyce, and not everyone thought
in
that
hindsight,
that was the matchmaking. I think even Team Dubois said like this was their middle fight, this was their sort of learning fight, being a bit disrespectful to Joyce, like playing him down essentially, having a bit of a dig in the sort of pre-fight build-up. But like they needed that fight. Like we've seen fighters get unstuck at European level before, but at heavyweight, it's almost a bit more raw.
I think you bang on. I think you bang on there.
Exaggerated because the gap from lower domestic to like English level to British to European, there's not that many there that would pose a risk.
I think you make some good points there, and I think you bang on. Like it's different to other divisions because, right? Let's have a think. Say, Christ, every podcast, but say Lewis Ritson, right? You know what I mean, right? Lost at one. Lost at Cheeseman. No, listen, no. Lost at 135. You know, you lose a fight like that in those divisions. The automatic thing, if people think of, is either A, move up in weight, or B, change trainer. All right, we'll go to 140. Like Dubois can't really go anywhere else, and like you say, there's that exactly. There's that thing of like I said, like you just said, knocking out those sort of puddings. Wow, the shock factor, the wild factor. But doing it again, second time around, because he's going to have to go back and be Dubois, the knockout artist. You're going to have to take a step back, down the levels. Dubois, they'll big it up on BT. Dubois back, you know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be an immediate rematch. Nobody wants to see it. We did a poll last night. I think it got over 1,000 votes for us, which is quite good. No one it's gone, right? And rightly so. I don't want to see it again, really. Not at this point, anyway. So what I'm saying is he's going to have to go back down the levels, knock people out, but that wow factor's gone. That it's just be like, oh, there's Dubois, like beating someone who he should. Do you know what I mean? It's not like
potentially
once you've lost that, it'll take him a while to get that back, unless he builds up again to not even a Gorman. It's going to have to be someone better at British.
It's
going to have to be someone decent.
Frank Warren hard because, like, again, where'd you go? Like, he's obviously going to have to sort of drop back and rebuild unless they throw him in the deep end against, like, I've seen different opponents mentioned, like a decent name to get him back in there. But no matter what he does, there's always going to be that asterisk around him of when he steps up again.
Yeah, how
is he going to handle that? It's like it was always a question mark because we'd never seen it before, but now we've seen it and it hasn't gone well for him. It's going to be very tough for him to shake the doubts of the public, and that could impact the Queensbury stable, the boxing on BT, because like who do they have as their flagship?
They go the next.
Got some big names like the boxing there, like Frampton and Taylor. Obviously, their sort of fight stateside will probably be still on BT. So they've got those.
Is it wrong that I associate them more with MTK than I do Frank?
Yeah, and that's the issue, they're both top rank on BT. In terms of Frank Warren exclusive stable, you're looking at it was essentially Dubois and Anthony Yard, wasn't it, who both now lost. Obviously, Yard at a higher level, he's in a massive fight next week. See what happens with him, and he could easily get back to world level quite quickly. But I think with Dubois being so young and the manner of this defeat, it's going to take him quite a long time.
I mean, that's why
3 to 4 years to get him back where the public are behind him and believing he's going to go on and do it. Well,
I'm not one to repeat myself, but that's what I mean. Like if they had built him into this sort of AJ 2.0, a bit of a cold, calculated sort of killer. Do you know what I mean? A heavyweight killer who people didn't need the personality to get behind. They were like, oh, Dubois the man, and like he's going to be world champion. He's the new AJ and all this, and it was like. They'd actually done a decent job at building him, but like you say, Frank looked a bit desperate in his post-fight interview last night. He was like, what about the rematch, Joe? What about the rematch? And Joe was just like, yeah, imagine there's fans here. Like, he was just like, get away. He just looked a bit desperate, and I just think, like, but actually, just I was wanting to say there, when we talk about resumes and, like, sort of building fighters up and that, I just think you've got to give credit to Joe Joyce. I think his resume now is decent. You know what I mean? He knows he's turned over late. He hasn't, even that debut against Ian Lewison, like at the time was like, bloody hell, he's going straight in with Ian Lewison for his debut. Do you know what I mean? But in 2017, like Ian Lewison, Lenroy Torres is on there, Stavern, what was left of Stavern, I guess, Ustinov, Jennings, that was 3 in a row. They're decent contender sort of, names, whether you like them or not. Like,
massively, and I think
Stavern, Ustinov, Jennings is clever matchmaking, but also I think like
the pedigree's turned over.
And I just think he's fought. He knows he's got no time to waste. So that's 4 in a row there for Joe Joyce. It's Ustinov, Jennings, but actually 5 in a row. You've got Stavern, Ustinov, Jennings, little tick over fight against Wallish and Dubois. Like it's decent that, and for 12 fights. Do you know what I mean?
Wasn't it? So
it's good that like
Olympic silver medal, and he's 35-year-old now. He's turned over not with one of the sort of main promoters. He's been one of like the big fish in the S-Jam stable, isn't it? Like working with him initially was at Ringstar Promotions and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're moving him fast. They've said that from the start. Like you don't make your debut against Ian Lewison in a 10-rounder, and then
time's not on his side, is it? At 35.
Ups and warm-ups. Yeah, that's what I mean. Because he's 35, because the noise, he needs to move quick. But also, it shows they've got belief in him and confidence that they're putting him in these fights. I think they have spoken, obviously, and again, lots of promoters and managements do, and the teams do, but they've always said like, how confident they are in him taking these fights. Like they took that Dubois fight, and I think it's the nature of boxing that we don't always get these 50-50 fights, and this was as close to a genuine 50-50 as
massively.
The odds drifted and altered around, obviously, as money came in, but it was a fight where you could make a genuine case for both men to win in different ways and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But with Joyce being the slight underdog, I sort of looked at it and thought, is he, like, are they cashing out in the sense of he's the older man, he's 35, or they're thinking, right, well, we don't quite know how far he can go. But what dissuaded me from that and sort of helped fuel my confidence in Joyce going in was like, it's not a massive money fight for him to cash out on. Like,
no.
Especially in lockdown, and they're saying they fought for lesser money than they were originally going to, and all the rest of it. And credit that it wasn't on pay-per-view. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But like, there was just something about it where you thought, actually, like, they're really confident in this fight. Like, they see something that they're going to exploit and obviously come out on top. And like fair play to me, didn't. Now he's right in the mix now, world title. If you think Fury, Joshua, hopefully they fight. If they do, the belts are going to get scattered. There's obviously Joyce and Usyk, I think, are 2 of the top ranked ones in the WBO. Any of those belts, I think Joyce is decent rank with the WBA as well. Like, chance he could pick up a world title in the next year or 2, but
do you think
he's going to want meaningful fights now? He's not looking at the rematch. He's got
he needs to go upwards. Do you think he's off the matchroom? My guess, I would say,
I think
putting 2 and 2 together here and getting probably 5. But social media rumors, you look at that, A, Eddie Hearn's little congratulations tweet last night. B, Marku and Lerone Richards signing the matchroom within, Marky this week, Richards in the last month. So there's obviously that close relationship there with Eddie and Sam Jones. And I don't know. I know he's been fighting on BT, but I'm not massively convinced he's Frank's exclusively. Dubois was Frank's golden egg last night. And I just think, I don't know, I think it makes sense. And if he wants to go and be in these meaningful fights, like you say, there's an absolute abundance of sort of just throw him into that mix of the heavyweights that Matchroom have got and can make them. You know what I mean? Usyk can be probably easily made on the Matchroom sort of platform. You've got Hrgovic, you've got the winner of Bakoli Kuzmin, you've just got there's absolutely loads of Chisora again. You know what I mean? There's absolutely Dillian White. There's just a shed load of fights from him over on that platform. And it just wouldn't surprise me one bit. Just as I say it, with that close relationship they obviously now have. I can't believe that they signed Marku last week and never discussed what's the criteria with Joe Joyce. Do you know what I mean? How boxing politics sort of works.
And that's you've just listed there. Those sorts of heavyweights are the ones that almost could do with getting in with to prove himself again. If he got in with it, or even a Huey Fury or someone and got the win, you think actually, all right, he's back in that mix. He's back at that level. Albeit there'll still be question marks. But with him now being in the Frank Warren side of things exclusively, and those all being on the Matchroom side, you think actually he could end up being frozen out to a certain extent. He's lost that aura of invincibility where they can balance 700,000 or whatever it was. They can the big money to bring these guys across and Hurdle potentially let them to earn that money. It's almost just obviously the momentum has stopped completely at the moment and it's going to take some time to rebuild it.
The rebuilding job will be fascinating, but I also think Joyce's next move will be fascinating as well.
I was just going to say, I think we need to give Joyce credit. Obviously, I am
massively.
And I'll revel in the fact that I actually got a prediction right.
I'll revel on the fact I jumped on the back of it and made some money. But I got it
again, even in the post-fight stuff we've seen there, they interviewed Dubois first, and we spent a lot of the time in this already talking about Dubois. Joyce won well. He
pissed me off a bit. That
deserves the credit, and those big fights hopefully are there for him, even if he doesn't necessarily get the world title fight soon. He's a fighter I wouldn't begrudge seeing in some decent money and having some good fights.
No, I think the next moves for
not necessarily just the Matchroom boys, but Sir Joseph Parker and that who fought on Sky before.
Another name, Joseph. So many names.
I'd have no issue seeing him in against, or if I was in charge, putting him in against, and all the best to him. Crack on.
I just might later back that up as well. We spent a lot of time talking about Dubois there, but I think massive credit to Joe Joyce. I think his conditioning was bang on last night. His chin is just made of absolute fucking granite. He's such a solid man. He's got probably the weirdest heavyweight skill set I've seen in a long, long time. And you look at him and you think, you actually should be a bit shit, but you're very, very strangely effective. We both said it in our mates last night. God, he's slow, but he's fast. It just beggars belief at times when you watch him. He's so different to sometimes he's thrown after the man's gone, he's missing, but what he does well. His engine's unreal.
I think
his chin's unreal. He's just
effective.
He's mad. He's
the heavyweights, as you said, there's no one like him. They can't really pin him down.
Can't fathom him out.
You think, all right, I'll catch you. He gets hit. I'll catch him. And the few occasions he did get hit. So he took it, he shrugged it off, and kept coming. And
the slightest of head wobble, but there was never a point where I thought he's gone. His legs are gone. And that must be demoralising for someone like Dubois, who's a big hitter. Do you know what I mean? Who can't really shake him whatsoever. I just think he's mad, but he's also pretty good at what he does. And
I think he genuinely, again, if you sort of consider Joshua and Fury at the top, and Joyce gives anyone else in the world problems, even he'd make a competitive, decent fight with those two as well. But
get that on the thumbnail tomorrow. That's the clip you need there. That's a good on the Twitter. Do you think last night sort of again?
I'm happy not to discuss the undercard at all. But
no, I'm not. I'll just quickly finish on the question for you. Do you think last night really sort of reaffirmed that Fury, AJ, and then there's a bit of a gap there. Like, do you think they're they're the elite two still?
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's no way they're at that level. Like, as I say, I think Joyce potentially. It sounds silly saying potentially about a 35-year-old, because if he's going to get that fight, he's older than those two. Like, he wants to get in and do it sooner than them, if that makes sense. But he could be. Like, I wouldn't rule him out against anyone else, really. Like, I'd be happy seeing him. I've mentioned some of the names there. I think Usyk
I like that one.
Probably beats him, outpoints him.
Yeah.
Joyce Wilder would be a really good fight, really interesting. Like, those questions you've asked about, can he take Dubois' power-ups? He's answered them yes. Would he be able to do the same against Deontay Wilder and keep coming? That's a different question. Like, I would honestly favour him against the likes of Chisora, likes of Fury, like Povetkin would be a decent fight. Dillian White would be a good fight, and I wouldn't be confident backing against Joyce in any of those at all. Like,
I like the Usyk one. Obviously, they've got that history. I think they met 2013 as amateurs in World Series of Boxing. Like, there's that amateur sort of rivalry probably still there as well from those days. I like that one. I think, again, I can't see that being made when he's with BT. It looks like Usyk will, stay on those Matchroom DAZN type of shows going forward. So, like you say, that probably, again, I think he probably will move personally, but I could be wrong on that. But I like that one. There's so many good ones out there for him. Do you know what I mean? And he was like, I'd be fascinated to see his next move, but there's no shortage of opposition that I'd like to see him in with. Like,
in terms of their level as well, like, our mates mentioned this, or a couple of them, one in particular I'm thinking, and he was like, is this just a bit shit? Like, watching that fight, and I was engrossed in it. Like, I thought this was really good, entertaining fight. It was close, it was competitive, and the other two, like, European fringe world level guys, or at least like Joyce has proven he is, and I think the production values and the whole Matchroom versus Warren, Sky versus BT, that's playing a part. And we sort of joked, and he was like, maybe it's because it looks like Dunstan Fed, looks like Lancastrian Suite. And for us who watch small hall shows, like, I was almost immune to that. But then when it gets drawn to your attention, you're a bit like, is this a bit low key for just how good and how relevant it was?
It's hard to be critical because they did make, like, it's being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. Like, it was meant to be at the O2, and, like, if you're talking backdrops and atmosphere and all that, then, it's not, they can't help what's happened with the pandemic and all that. And, like, it's hard to criticise because I'd rather it was on than not. I do get what you mean. There is definitely production values and differences between, like, broadcast and, like, backdrops and things like that. And against that wooden backdrop last night with a couple of plasma screens and those sort of cagey 7, 8, 9 scrappy set of rounds, it was a bit like, I don't know, it wasn't great. I wouldn't say it was shit. I was engrossed in it. I was fascinated by it. I was, like, intrigued, interested. It always held me attention. I think there was quite a few sort of, Joyce isn't maybe the most aesthetically pleasing, and if Dubois is not knocking people out, then he's probably not either. It wasn't a classic by any means, but it was a fight that I found interesting throughout, and it was always had talking points and action and stuff. There was always something going on. It's a fascinating thing about the
fan point of view, and, like, not exclusively us in this one, like, because we're talking to sort of more casual fans. Like, did BT and did they miss a trick? 'Cause I'm not saying they had to, like. To me, I'm not bothered about that sort of thing. So whether they've got fireworks, whether it's in a back garden, whether it's whatever. Yes, when it is amazing and it's a stadium fight, you can appreciate the backdrop. And if it's a big fight as well, it does make it that little bit more special. There's no doubt of that. But for me, like, I could have watched those two fight in the car park because I appreciate how relevant it was to boxing, how good a matchup it was in terms of the matchmaking. Not necessarily a good fight in the result of things. Like, to me, it was fine. It was entertaining enough. But when you're not then putting it on pay-per-view, you almost want to maximise that. And I think that maybe
it's difficult. It is. We've discussed this before, haven't we? That, like, they just don't compete in terms of Sky, in terms of exposure and stuff like that. It definitely had casual appeal last night because I judged that on. Not that I'm some sort of oracle of boxing, but I mean, because a lot of my mates who have that interest, like, text, like, what do you think about a night, Steve? How do you see this going? I had like, different messages popping up from different people. Like, give us a shout when it's on. Like, do you know what I mean? What time is it on? Oh, it's a pay-per-view. No, they knew they was aware it was on, but it was like, and they watched it and they had their views on it and stuff. Like, it did have that mass appeal, and a lot of people were like definitely tuning in and were definitely up for it last night. They just don't do it as well as Sky, really. And like, we've been through this a million times. Like, Sky Sports News is such a massive vehicle of 24/7 coverage and studio guests, and I don't know. Like, I'm a lot more probably even more familiar, I guess, than like with Sky Fighters than your RBTs. They're just accessible. I don't know. It's just better sort of plugged, better promoted, better. Like I say, Sky Sports News is massive, like, for them. But it was, I don't know, because I was just happy it was on, like you say. Like, I could have watched it in the car part as well. Like, the undercard was probably what suffered because I guess they just didn't have the budget. Do you know what I mean? Like, they could have went all in. They could have, like, did they need? Could you ask the question? Could they not have put a proper blockbuster on and put Yard Arthur as this massive chief support? Do you know what I mean? Do those shows need to be too? But then that goes into TV dates, broadcasting, contracting. There's a lot goes along with that. But the undercard,
it wasn't when it originally was going to be on box office, and Yard Arthur was chief support. That was
fair.
Because of rearranged dates and what have you. They've getting dates to fill, contracts, like obligations to meet, and all the rest of it.
I'm just glad we've seen it though, and I think if the undercard had to suffer, and it wasn't great, then I sat through it all and tweeted my way through it, and
we did it.
Watched it. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's the thing. Like, we've said many times, we'll sit and watch anything, and I struggled with the undercard last night. It was
you did.
I think because of how good they were as well. Like, the home fighters are these prospects and these good fighters.
Yeah,
against limited opposition. When it's actual small hall, you sort of still, the prospects are at a lower level as well. So, like, yes, they're going to win and you expect them to win comfortably, but you just sort of like understand why it's happening. Whereas the Kamza Shiraz that went through the motions for me, got a lot of praise from Frampton and Hayne. He looked good. He looked
a lot of praise. I did. He did against.
But, like, again, it was just, as I say, going through the motions. He was never in danger of losing that fight or getting hurt. So could he maybe have put his foot on the gas a bit earlier, a bit more ruthlessly?
That was huge praise from Frampton, that, wasn't it? If he doesn't become a world champion, that's a big statement. That, I tell you what, they mentioned in commentary a possible fight with Troy Williamson next, and that would really get us excited. I think that'd be a cracking bit of in-house Queensbury matchmaking. I like that one.
Yeah. Anything else on the undercard you want to discuss? Anyone in particular?
You steering me towards Jack Catterall here.
Come on again. This rant, what you've got against poor Jack?
Well, first things, from against my own better judgment, I took the Catterall stoppage at 6-4. I think it was 250 to 1 on in certain places, and I just thought, you're 250 to 1 on, but they're knocked out 6-4. I thought, I'll have a bit of that. And he knocked him down twice with 2 cracking shots, but at the same time, never looked like finishing him. It was so bizarre. Like, just bizarre. Like, as I say, had him down twice. Proper decent knockdowns as well. And, the guy looked pretty Hoya or Guaya or whatever he's called, looked pretty done in, and but Catterall just couldn't quite get him out of there. Doesn't do a great deal for me, Jack Catterall. Like, I don't know, I just struggle. I struggle with watching him. I think it's because he's one of them fighters that just does enough. I always feel like Codfat mentioned last night after, I feel like there's definitely more in there, and maybe it will take a Taylor or Ramirez to really bring that out of him. But it's almost that sort of Fury type of, I'm doing enough. Like, I know I'm going to win this on points. All right, I've put him down twice, but just what he is. I've just sat through a lot of his fights before, and he's got some decent names on the record, like O'Hara and that. But like, I referred back to that card at Paisley in 2016 that I was at last night, and I watched a lot of names go a lot of rounds and win a lot of points. But Paul Butler was on there.
Not like you're holding a grudge or anything.
A lot of 4 years ago, I can't get over it. I don't know. It just doesn't massively excite us, Andrew. And again, like, I would have liked to seen him maybe go through the gears a bit more and get that stoppage last night, because the guy was certainly ready to be knocked out, I think. But I think it'll probably happen. He'll fight for a world title probably next, maybe one after next against, maybe it's Taylor, depending on what he does, or Ramirez or something. But I know he's got his shot all lined up, and he took a bit step aside money, didn't he? I'm sure. Maybe if that brings out the best of him, fair play. But if you're asking who will win, Josh Taylor or him, I think Taylor would win with something to spare, to be honest with you. But he did the job, like Shiraz. He got did the job. Jack Massey did what he had to do last night. It was happy boxing long against Bayat, who came into it pretty well, bigged up by the sort of Frank Warren social side of it, this big, massive puncher. And I think if you drill down in his record, yeah, all right, he does have the knockouts on there, but against who? I think in the 16th fight, he fought a debutant, and it was just all a bit strange. He tried, he plodded forward, he sort of held his feet and did try and land some shots on Massey. Nothing that massively bothered him, and I think Massey, in the end, sort of got a comfortable points win. There's a couple of sort of comments about his conditioning, and he looked like a bit unfit after 8 rounds. But I'd seen, I think it was Massey's, one of his relatives commented to us through the week on Twitter saying like it's been frustrating. Bayat was the 5th or 6th opponent that had been offered that fight, and finally they got one over the line, and probably not the opponent they had in mind for that. But again, got the win.
That's the value of that undercard, isn't it? Like, I heard a few people, and I was thinking the same, that like, actually, in terms of the entertainment, you didn't need an undercard. You could have had a 45-minute, half-hour session of punditry beforehand, looking ahead to Joyce, and just had that fight. But for the boxers, they need to get out. Like, again, Frank has...
Cattle needed to shake the ring rust, you know what I mean? That was a proper...
to fill. And yeah, I was just going to go on to Catterall there, because like Carl Frampton is a pundit, so I really like him as a boxer, and seems like a bloke as a person.
Jim mate of Catterall as well, though, isn't he?
He's not afraid to speak his mind. He's not tied down, where you see a lot of them, and I've been critical of this in the past, where they're sort of just bigging up the promoters, and the promoter and their fighters. So it was interesting for the praise he had for Shiraz. I think actually that could be genuine. But where the Catterall frustration sort of comes from and stems from, similar to, in addition to what you've said, is he was saying like he didn't really get out of first, second gear. Like,
he never does.
He could have got it. Not only saying I've seen him in the gym. There's a lot more to come.
But he is a gym mate.
He could have got him out there in 5 or 6 rounds, etc. And you're like, well, yeah, that's then where the frustration as fans come from, because we're being told, and what we can see as well, like, Catterall didn't look trouble. He didn't look like he was putting the foot on the gas. He was, again, never in trouble. He landed a beautiful left-hander drop him the first time, and obviously got him later on as well. And I think this is where there's 2 sides to it, and there's the fans watching it, and there's the trainer and the boxer watching it and obviously doing it, because Jamie Moore in the corner and Nigel Travis and the team, they will have been delighted with that performance, in that might be saying you could have got him out there, you could have done this, but he's been out in the ring for a year, so they'll be happy for him to go those rounds and to shake the ring rust. The fact that he did catch him with some clean shots, like, right, we've got that, we can work on this, we can do this. And I think the talk is getting him a fight on the undercard of Taylor Ramirez, if that happens in the unification.
Right.
And obviously there's talk of him fighting the winner, but I think what will likely happen is the winner will vacate and he'll fight for a vacant WBO, which is probably the best route for Catterall, probably the best
outcome
available, because I'd trade him goes right now to beat him, and he maybe needs that little bit more seasoning. And obviously, if he picks up that world title, Frank could get him some defences against better opposition than he's faced so far, but not really the elite, and see if he can progress from there, because he's definitely got the skills, he's got the ability, there's no doubt of that, but
he's been around for a long time now.
He's had a lot of fights, considering where he is, the level he's just recently sort of getting.
I guess he's like an undercard fighter, if that makes sense. He's never been like, he's from the Northwest, Chorley, I think it is. He's never had his own show or headline. Do you know what I mean? He's always sort of that, Jack Catterall's on the undercard, do you know what I mean? But he's fought 26 times. He's knocked out 50% of those. He's got 13 stoppages. Like, I feel like he's been mandatory now, number one contender for about 6 years. Like his last 3 fights was Hoyer last night, was Schwarzkopf before that, and was Oscar Amador before that. That is the man that has just been now ticking over, keeping busy, shaking off the ring rust before a big chance for bang on 2 years. Like since he beat O'Hara, but there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong, with his domestic record. He's beat everyone he needs to beat here. He's beat O'Hara, he's beat McKenna, he's beat Tyrone Nurse, he's beat Gethin, even Joe Hughes, Tom Stalker back in 2014.
That was when I first saw him, and sort of came to my mind was the Stalker fight. And yeah, like I think he's gone that route, and Frank sometimes does that way. He's not afraid to take his fighters that domestic route, and he's
a bit like Terry Flanagan. God, how many
season? Yeah, it's another
fights did he have? How many fights did he have before world title? 35 or something.
Well, Liam Smith did the same. Like go to the British, get the domestic sort of experience that you need, toughening up. And then once they get there, it's like, right, well, we're getting that ranking within the WBO. And whoever the WBO rank, however bad they are, you're going to box them, hopefully look good against them, and sit on that mandatory position. Like fight those eliminators, get that mandatory position, make it impossible to not get the world title. But they're very then careful and considerate about that last step and who they end up fighting for the WBO, like for the world title.
I guess that's where a bit of my frustration comes from, just because I think he's been around that long and
he's
been a pro for 8 years. He seems to be in a perennial state of taking over, but I know it's coming. I know it's
You know how good he can be, and you've heard how good he can be, and he's a level above these opponents he's fighting. So you're sort of praising him because you say, well, yeah, he is good, but I want to see him in with someone else good now. Like if we're led to believe that he's world level, and I've got no reason to doubt that, I've got no doubt that he can be.
Yeah,
you want to see him in with a good name, and I think that's hard to do when you're not headlining the show. Because
that's it, and I think
you're going to have to pay more for those better fighters to be as a chief support, which is obviously when they look at going down pay-per-view routes and what have you. Like on a show like that, he's not going to be in with a former world champion or a contender in a 50-50 fight, is he? It's just keeping busy and basically don't lose before you get a chance to fight for the world title.
I guess it's coming, and hopefully it's next or the one after next. Like, the Taylor fight, fair enough. Like, if Taylor wants that sort of, before he moves up, maybe if he wants that sort of England Scotland type of thing, it wouldn't do a massive deal for me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't like.
Yeah, there's an angle there.
There's an angle there, but it doesn't massively get us excited.
House fights essentially for BT should be to make. It's just basically what Taylor wants to do.
Anyway, but who else was that? I think Louis Lynn got a stoppage win on the undercard. I don't think he was televised, or at least I didn't see him. It's part of the broadcast. I think that's it. I think we've named them all, haven't we?
Yeah, as I say, I paid very little attention to it. Like, I sat watching it was on, and like as I say, I watched the fights that were televised. David Adelaide was on as well.
Oh, David Adelaide, yeah, sorry, God, that's my bad. I actually thought he looked really good against Danny Whittaker, and
he's an interesting one because again, I think I've probably seen all of his fights so far. They've been on big, obviously big, strong, heavy hit and heavyweight.
Yeah,
going to go through that exact thing. We've gone sort of full circle right back to what we talked about Dubois. Like there'd be no issues putting him against like it was AJ Carter and sort of domestic level opponents that you'll probably blast out of there in a couple of rounds. And it's really tough because you can say he's gone rounds before. He went, I think, 3 rounds before last night, 2 last night, like not many rounds, but when you're having things all your own way and it's one way traffic, it's tough to quantify how much they're learning.
Well, that's it. He fought Danny Whittaker last night, who pretty limited, didn't look in the best of shapes, had a winning record, but I don't know, Adelaide looked good. He looks the part anyway. I thought he landed a lovely sort of short right uppercut just before the stoppage. He looked good again, like you say. It's sort of you've got to be wary of the hype train, haven't you? But he seemed really level-headed in his interview as well, and someone I'd keep a close eye on going forward.
He's had 3 or 4 pro fights now, so
4 now, 4 and 4,
yeah. So
4 wins.
He's probably you'd expect at least another 6.
Yeah,
where he's basically padding out undercards for him, securing stoppages, building up this reputation. and then you're looking at another year or so essentially of that, probably a little bit longer, and then that's when you're going to see where he is, or you're going to find out where exactly he is.
Absolutely. Someone again, I'll sort of add to me little tracker. Not that I've got a tracker, but like Liam Davis, the sort of week before, like someone catches your eye on the telly, you think, actually, I'd definitely watch you again.
Yeah, like that's how the sport goes round, isn't it? Like for us anyway, you're watching these shows all the time, and
like cycle continues, doesn't it?
Seen before, you think, actually, he's looked impressive. I'll keep my eye on him.
Anything else from last night, or anything over the weekend? I know Tony
Jones, Drew, move on.
Tony Yoka won on Friday night. Funny again, like I say about the heavyweight perceptions and stuff, just a quick one on him that, going into it, a lot of people on social media were like, really like him, he's the real deal. He'd give any of the top 10 a real good fight right now. Then he labours to a points win over Christian Hammer. I didn't say it, but apparently he didn't look great in doing so. A few people said he looks a bit Bridger weight. And it was just that, 1 minute he's that sort of hipster flavour of the month. Oh, wow, what a talent, former Olympian, etc. Next minute it's like, actually, he was a bit shit against Christian Hammer, who apparently made the fight pretty shit. I can't say it, so I can't judge I can't really go into it. But I just mean, it's funny how perceptions change, isn't it?
That's just like the knee-jerk nature of modern
boxing,
sport, like just sport in general. Like we see with football all the time. Like there's the phrase, "You're only as good as your last performance," and that's not necessarily true, is it? It's like there could be reasons for a flat performance, whatever. He broke his hand as well, apparently. I don't know when he did that during the fight. But
again, though, he's another name that is just he's in that B tier, second tier of heavyweight contenders. Like there's absolutely loads of them.
And this is potentially what's going to
get a super series on the go.
Extend the division one way or the other, because you've got, like, again, the top two, as we sort of call them. If, say, for example, they're no longer for this sport, or not much longer for this sport, year or two, you could easily see them fighting. Winner walks away, scatters the belts. The other one, a few more big paydays, and they're both out the sport in the next 2 years. But you're looking for who is going to be that star, and there doesn't seem to be one person. Obviously, a lot was put on Dubois, like, because he was so young that he could potentially lead it, and he still could. He could come back and do that. But right now, it's almost every man for himself. You could make a case for any of them beating any of them, and that potentially leads to a really competitive heavyweight division.
It is. Whether you think the quality,
it also sort of eliminates that one person of like who is the undisputed champion, and I think fans will find fault with both sides of it, because Klitschko, for example, was dominant for ages against not massively great opposition, and fans got bored of him just beating everyone before him. And then when Fury beat him and obviously went off the rails and the belts got scattered again, and then you've got Joshua Wilder, Fury came back, and I want to find out who's the man. So it's almost like this insatiable appetite.
Well, that's what it is. That's
the constant battle is with all the belts going around is to see one man, one champion in each division, and then when we do, it's like, it's boring. He's the man. He's dominating. We want someone else to come along, and it'd be interesting to see how it all plays out. And I mean, the Super Series idea is brilliant, because
there's so many of them that could go in now.
You've got 8 heavyweights who aren't on the massive money that Joshua and Fury are on, but Joshua and Fury are no longer there.
Yeah.
Or even if it was like to crown number one contender for them, there's a lot of competitive.
So many.
Not necessarily world-class matchup, but a lot of competitive matchups you could make in heavyweight.
Well, the depth's there. Well, that's what I mean. The depth is there in the heavyweight division. Whether the quality is another argument whatsoever. I heard another argument completely. I heard someone say last night that for the future of heavyweight boxing, the wrong person won. And I get it and I don't get it. I was like, if you want that new king and you thought it was going to be Dubois, like that new sort of, the new king, like I said, if you thought it was going to be Dubois and he'd reign for the next 10 years or whatever, then fair enough, the wrong person did win, but he's obviously not that good. He's not that at the minute, so he got beat. Do you know what I mean?
And I talk a lot about narratives in boxing, sport, and they don't always play out as planned. Like,
maybe the division does need some.
Wanted for him, and BT could have built a whole channel around him if he got to that Joshua level of world level of boxing, but also popularity, and they'll have had visions of the stadium fights and all the rest of it. And
maybe the division does need new blood, but it obviously wasn't to be him. But I like you say, like even in the next few weeks, you've got Bakoly Kuzman rescheduled, cracking fight, probably not world class fight again. They're in that tier again, that of just making the moves. You've got Huey Fury.
No, these all are like
not the best of fights, but it's on the undercard anyway.
But imagine you had like Huey, Bakoly, Joyce. Now, say for example, Dillian White, Hrgovic. There's 5.
Fucking Hoy Babic in for the crack. Do you know what I mean? Tony Yoka, like there's
there's 7. Like easily, you could fill a little quarterfinals.
Oh, easily
that level. Easy. And whoever wins that comes out the other end with some like major pedigree, some like level to be like a bit of. I don't know. I've lost the word, but like a bit of genuine ability to say, actually, I deserve this. I've earned it.
Well, that's it. Like good point. There we go. Box rec. So right. Eliminate.
Knowledgeable.
No, but eliminate the big. Well, I'll say the big 3. I'll put Wilder in there because he's pretty inactive at the minute, right? So Fury's not going to be in this imaginary tournament. Now there's Joshua, now there's Wilder, right? But then below that, right, you've got Povetkin, you've got Usyk, Andy Ruiz Jr. Like, can he come again? Who knows? Michael Hunter, the sort of bogeyman of the division. Oh, have you gone?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, I can't see you. Anyway, Michael Hunter, the one that no one seems to want to fight. Dillian White, Chisora, Joe Joyce, Joe Parker, Tony Yoka, Oscar Rivas, like Luis Ortiz. It just keeps going and going and going. But
PBC one's out, like Ortiz and Ruiz, because of how much money they've earned. Like
Hrgovic, and then
realistic, like, you're looking at the ones you can sort of afford to get in this sort of talk.
Aye.
But yeah, imagine, again, obviously,
Matthew could do that. Matthew and DAZN could do their own. The amount they've got at the minute, But anyway, that's another rant for another day. We'll not touch on next weekend because
we've agreed for the listeners and the viewers, as you all know, we've agreed we're going to do a separate one midweek previewing this weekend boxing coming up.
Yeah.
Obviously that'll be done after the MTK Golden contract, so we'll just have a little very quick chat about that before we.
Big shout with that. Finally rescheduled sort of final date of the Golden contract. I think Walsh. Jazza Dickens, Ryan Walsh, Jazza Dickens, such a pick and fight, that such a 50-50. Bookies have got a dead level as of this morning, both just below evens with 365. At this point, I'm sitting right on my fence. The way my predictions have been going lately, I'm not saying now yet, but I can't wait for that one. And you've got that sort of that that underwhelming. Oh no, not underwhelming, but like. Maybe it's the sort of
low profile
light heavyweight final that I guess no one predicted, and also no one like probably had in mind and wanted really, between Ricardo Bolotniks and Serge Michel. I guess
just there though, like this is where the narrative gets ripped up and thrown out. Like again. You think, oh well, could like imagine Jose Burton in there again? You could have potentially another sort of domestic fight, but it doesn't work like that. And I think that's the beauty of tournaments in boxing, that it's who deserves it more often than not. Say for decisions, etc., controversy and all the rest of it. But that's what you're doing. You're making it a meritocracy. You're basing it on what the fighters deserve. Like you want to be the man, you've got to go in there and fight this guy. All right, well. Your next opponent's the one who wins this fight, and then your next opponent's the one who's won 2 fights on the other side of the bracket, and it just gets rid of all the need for the politics and the matchmaking. And like, oh well, I'll fight you, but in 2 years' time, or I'll fight you after I fought this guy, and well, I'll fight you, but then there has to be a rematch clause, and I've got to fight you after then. You've got to come to my house to fight, and all the rest of it. It's just like gets rid of all the bullshit.
I think Dickens Walsh is a cracking fight. Honestly, really good fight. But not Nick's Michelle again. I'll tune into that one. I think a fight on the undercard that is getting a lot of people talking, especially that sort of southern sort of small hall scene. People is Egbenike versus Harlem Eubank.
Really good one for Eubank, right?
Cracking. Oh, he was good last time out against Martin McDonough. He dealt with him really well. I think that's a hell of a fight. That.
Very lazy comparison to Conor Benn, but it's that name, isn't it? He's got the name.
Yeah, he's got the name, right?
Not many people have sort of believed that he could do it, and obviously he's not necessarily got to like massively high level yet, but
Is that on?
learning. He's learning on the job. He's showing that he can, he's no mug.
I always do like a bit of midweek boxing as well. It's a bit of a treat, that. So I think it's on Sky Sports. I might be wrong, so different quarters on that. It'll either be on Sky Sports or IFL anyway, but I think it is on Sky. That's Wednesday.
Final was.
Yeah.
Final was on Sky, so it would make sense.
So then after that, I think we'll do one on sort of Thursday night. We'll have a bit of a preview show. Looking forward to Yard. Well, actually going in order. Looking forward to Saunders Murray, Yard, Arthur, and then you've got a big stateside clash between Errol Spence and Danny Garcia as well at the weekend coming up. So
we get our teeth stuck into that.
Start of a new month on Tuesday, and it's a good December to round the year off, to be honest.
Sweet.
Bye. Enjoy it. Again, thanks to everyone that tunes in and likes the new video format. Anyone wants to subscribe on YouTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, leave a little review, would be more than grateful. So thanks to everyone. We're
a bit reinvigorated at the minute with this one. We've had a few suggestions for it, and we thought, well, we'll give it a go. And it sort of sparked the enthusiasm again. Not that we've ever lacked the enthusiasm. I think we've just lacked maybe the sort of joining of our timetables and getting it sorted. But it's just given us that little, as I say, little bit of a spark to get back involved with it. So hopefully we'll have regular, weekly, or even 2 episodes in a week.
Hopefully a few guests come as well. It won't always just be me. It won't always be me and Andrew. We've got hopefully a few lined up.
In this between now and obviously end of the year, definitely, and even beyond. Even in the quieter times in boxing, there's always stuff to be getting on with. So if you've got any questions, you can email us, info@britishboxingblog.com, or hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I think that's about it. YouTube comments, I suppose, as well.
Make sure you play around for a pound. Get your prediction.
We're around at the moment, round 11, and then round 12 is going to sort of lead on. So our last round of the year, get some prizes handed out, and that's going to basically be around the Joshua Pulev card and everything in around that time. Market fights coming up.
Definitely look forward. All right, cheers, Andrew. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.